The previous video looked at the short-run aggregate supply curve, and we saw how the upward sloping short-run aggregate supply curve can be moved to the left and to the right by changes in the costs of production. Now, there is another concept that we need to consider here, which is the long-run aggregate supply curve. Now, the short-run aggregate supply curve is very much kind of the actual situation, what's going on in the economy at a particular moment in time. The long-run aggregate supply curve is important because it shows us the productive capacity of the economy. So it's a more kind of theoretical concept because it's talking to us about the amount that could be produced within an economy rather than the amount necessarily that is being produced. So we're talking about the productive capacity. It's quite important to keep that in mind. So let's think about the situation that we've got in our economy then. We said that in the short run, if there was an increase in real output, then there would be an increase in price level as well, and that's what makes the short-run aggregate supply curve slope upwards. But if we think about it, that can really only continue up to a point. For instance, we said that what would happen is that firms would start paying their workers overtime and so on, but we would reach a point ultimately where all of the workers in the economy were being employed to their maximum possible potential. And beyond that, it would be impossible for firms to have their labour work any harder. They simply couldn't do it. I suppose to an ultimate extreme, that would be having workers work, full 24-hour periods. We would reach a period where it was impossible to get any more from our workers. We had maximised their productivity. We were paying them overtime. They were working as many hours as they could. We simply couldn't employ any more. Similarly, with the capital within the economy, there is a limited capital stock. We saw earlier on in the course that the factors of production, one of them is capital, and it's scarce. So there is a limit to the amount of capital which exists within the economy. So what do these things mean? Well, they mean that actually, although in the short run, the short-run aggregate supply curve slopes upwards, in the long run, we encounter a situation where the long-run aggregate supply curve is actually a vertical line. And we often annotate that point as being YF, and that represents the full employment level of output. So what this diagram is basically telling us is that there is a level of real output for each economy, YF, which cannot be exceeded given the resources that they have at the moment. So the capacity of the economy is YF. The productive capacity of the economy is YF with the factors of production which they currently have. So what that means is if the economy wants to change its productive capacity, if it wants to move to the right, because obviously it does want to move to the right, it wants to be able to produce more. If the economy wants to move to the right, it needs to be able to change essentially the level of the factors of production within the economy or the efficiency with which they are moved. So the long-run aggregate supply curve is a vertical line that we annotate as YF to represent the full employment within the economy. So let's go on then in the next diagram to think about what may cause long-run aggregate supply to change over time. So just a reminder then that what we're talking about when we talk about long-run aggregate supply is the productive capacity of the economy. Now, what we want in economics is we obviously want to maximise the welfare of society. And that means that we want to try and maximise our productive capacity. We want to try and get as much stuff as we can. So what we want to see is we want to see long-run aggregate supply moving to the right. We want to see our full employment level of output increasing over time. So previously, this was our maximum capacity for our economy, but what we want is over time, we want to be able to produce this much. We want to be able to increase our capacity within the economy. So what can we do in order to be able to do that? Well, there are a few factors, and the way I find to break them down is to think about, firstly, the factors of production. Think about them in three different ways. Firstly, the quality of them. Secondly, the quantity of them. And thirdly, the mobility and the efficiency of their movement. So when we think about these, first of all, factors of production, generally what we are thinking about here, the ones which are changeable really within an economy are the labour and the capital. The enterprise we'll look at in the other one, and the land you generally regard as being relatively fixed. So the quality of labour, what might that mean? Well, that might mean making our workers better. So more education, more training, something like that. That would make our workers more skilled and increase their capacity. Quality of capital would refer to the productivity, so kind of technological advancements and things like that, coming up with new, more efficient ways of doing things. At the moment, we're thinking maybe about things like artificial intelligence and robotics, things like that, which are really improving the quality of the capital stock within the economy. Quantity is just how many of those things there are. So, for instance, in the labour market, the quantity of labour in terms of the kind of the working population could be changed by, for instance, lowering the school leaving age. So leaving school earlier, meaning you enter work sooner. It could be done by increasing the retirement age, meaning you stay in the workforce longer. It could mean encouraging immigration in order to boost the size of the population. It could also mean, for instance, cutting benefits or cutting tax rates to try and incentivize more people to enter the workforce. So there's quite a lot that can be done to influence the quantity of labour. And the quantity of capital, the government might be able to encourage a higher level of capital in an economy by, for instance, maybe offering subsidy or something like that for capital expenditure. The mobility and the efficiency talks about how easy it is for those factors of production to be used and to be moved within an economy. It's important within an economy that the factors of production go to where they're needed most. So it may be the case that the government might try to encourage the movement of workers by maybe improving the infrastructure in terms of transport or various things like that. Efficiency as well is important to think about. So this may include, for instance, things like the efficiency of institutions, so kind of the legal structure, the banking structure, and so on, and whether those things work efficiently in order to reallocate the factors of production. And the other aspect of it to think about is competition. So when we're thinking about the competition within the economy, what we're thinking about there are the level of competition within industries. Are firms pushing each other to try and come up with better ideas, more efficiency, and so on? Do we have people starting up businesses and taking risk and so on? That's the kind of the enterprise aspect from the factors of production point above. So there are lots of interconnected factors which influence the long-run aggregate supply position for an economy. But broadly speaking, I think they come down into these two categories. So firstly, the factors of production, the quality, the quantity, and the mobility of those factors of production, and then secondly, the level of competition and risk taking within the economy, and all of those factors combined are the ones which will influence the position of long-run aggregate supply. And as they increase within the economy, we will hopefully see that long-run aggregate supply moves to the right, as we can see in the diagram here.